Hey, I'm Sheldon Scott, Global Head of Purpose at Eaton Workshop, and welcome to Eaton, DC. My name is Sheldon Scott, and I'm the Global Head of Purpose at Eaton Workshop.
Sheldon, thank you for your time today. Much appreciated. Can you just entail what your role is and what your responsibilities are around here?
Yes, so as the Global Head of Purpose, simply put, my primary responsibilities are to protect and push the triple bottom line, and what we call our TBL metrics and framework. And that's people, profit, planet. And Eaton Workshop as a TBL company, as a part of its governance structure, looks at the impact on people, profit, and planet in every decision-making process that we have throughout the company.
Well, can you elaborate on Eaton's mission?
Yeah, I mean, the mission is hospitality as a function of environmental and social change and social betterment. And I think what is really important about that mission is not only is it a way that hospitality as a industry can move forward, but I think it's a way that corporate America will eventually have to move forward in that space, because if anything, over the last 3 or 4 years of dealing with COVID and now dealing with environmental instability and climate change, it's clear that if we are interested in continuing to occupy this place on Earth as we are right now, that there are going to have to be some major changes in behavior. And and that behavior not only includes individuals, but it also includes like how corporations behave. And I think in just setting a new standard and a new bar of like how companies think about our limited resources of people, Earth, is it's nuanced, but it's also incredibly critical, because there's just no way that we'll be able to continue to live a life similar to this, because there will be some changes unless we make some major tough decisions about how we interact with the Earth and the people on a day-to-day basis.
Not shy away from Eaton at all, but you also are a world-renowned artist, correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you should elaborate what you focus on and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really not too much of a departure from my work here at Eaton. I think when I had my first conversation with Catherine Lowe, who's the founder of Eaton, that's a conversation that we had, because she too is an artist, and we were both figuring out like how this concept works well within and outside of our practices. But my primary practice as a fine artist just looks at or plays within the intersection of race, economics, and sexuality, while kind of impugning the concept of like black male supernaturality, which is kind of a concept I've been exploring for the last 10 years, looking how people view and experience black bodies, particularly black males' bodies, while also taking like a restorative history approach to my work, where I'm kind of looking at some of the dominant narratives from history and kind of examining and challenging them as being true and honest and humane representations of like what experience were like for Western Africans who were living and enslaved in the Gullah Geechee region of the United States, which is where I'm from, the coastal region of South Carolina. So, given that, working at a place that really looks at art as a vehicle to change and make the world a better place, I don't think that I could have had a better quote unquote job or companion to my practice than working here at Eaton Workshop and doing that kind of work.
Because that was actually going to be my next question. I know it's hard as a creative and just being an artist to find companies to, well, let alone want to work for a company, let alone find one that, you know, the core values are there and it's shared. So yeah, much respect for that.
Yeah, you know, I think in my first conversation with Kat, you know, it was kind of clear like what her mission and vision was. Like, you know, like her father had charged her a few years earlier with coming up with the next big thing in hospitality, and you know, and I think it was really kind of. It seems like it's a departure, but really at the core of hospitality, this is what hospitality is. You know, it's about welcoming people and creating a space for people to have an extension of their home as they're abroad. And you know, and I think that that kind of ethics or those kinds of practices have left hotels and the hotel industry largely, but you know, like what really Eaton is doing is kind of focusing on at what hospitality is at its core, and you know, bringing in that intentionality and you know, letting the identity of the people who make up this place actually be reflected in everything you do and everything that we see here. Also, you know, the design decision to pay homage to what the building was before we took it over. It used to be an old bus station back in the 60s. So like a lot of the tile work is to that, and it had this old motel kind of motif. So you see some of that. The building adjacent, which you kind of broke through, was an old printing press. So you see the notions of those also coming through the design. It's just really, you know, I think what really, when people say what's good design, what they're actually saying is what's good story. You know, Kat put together an amazing design team who knew the story well and knew how to put the words and the frames and the phrasing and the paragraphs and the chapters into that story, and that's how you end up with, you know, such a beautiful design aesthetic. It's just everything just kind of lines up in that way. And you know, and then I came along and you know, started to insert the art into the design perspective with some curatorial work there, and it just, you know, everything flows because everything is incredibly intentional. You could point at one thing and you can ask about it and someone will be able to tell you, well, this is why this was done. Nothing was done just because.
So can we talk about the community aspect of everything?
Yeah. So you know, one of the core things I think that Kat shared with me when we were first interviewing, talking about this project, she really dropped this phrase, hotel as community center, like several times in the ethos. It's like thinking about how, you know, as opposed to the way that, you know, hospitality is kind of set up right now where everything is about transient communities, people coming in from other places. It's like, how can this building be in service of the community in which it sits? And that was my first job as a director of culture, to build the connective tissue between the community and the hotel. And you know, the idea of like allowing this place to be an open access kind of canvas space for the community to come in and figure out how they can best use it, because you know, I think for us our biggest asset is the building itself, you know, as a way for people to organize and create conversations around impact. That, you know, that's what we can do. And you know, and I think, you know, I remember during George Floyd, and you know, this is height of COVID. You know, everybody's in a different space, you know, in terms, in relationship to humanity at the time, as we all realize how vulnerable and connected we are. And someone had reached out because you know, it was like, oh, you know, Eaton doesn't have Black Lives Matter on their building. You know, because at the time people were getting banners and all that stuff, and you know, a lot of value signaling. And you know, my response is like, well, I don't have to put Black Lives Matter on the building because Black Lives Matter is in the building. this has always been a place and resource
Yeah.
for those communities and those organizations to organize and then go forth and do their work in a way that they just wouldn't normally have that kind of access to a space like this. And what I thought was more important is like not what you put on or take off on those buildings, because I would venture to say that the vast majority of those buildings back in 2020 don't have those signs up anymore in the window.
Yeah.
But the work still needs to get done. And that's very clear, especially what happened in Jacksonville 2 days ago, that there's still a lot more work to do. And that to us is way more important than value signaling. It's way more important than, spending a couple $100 on a vinyl sign and putting it on the building and thinking that that's the work. It's not the work. The work is what happens within. And, the thing I think that's really important about that is like Eaton doesn't put itself in front of or even alongside, organizations and communities that's doing that work. We find ourselves very comfortably behind those folks and supporting the work that they've been doing for decades and figuring out a way to help them to increase the impact of the work that they're already doing, instead of us as a corporation going around thinking that we can do the work that we're not necessarily a part of those communities are having to do.
Now, before we jump into wellness, I have a quote from the founder, Catherine. She said, "I had to learn about self-care before I could begin to build a community built on collective care." So can you just elaborate on like the self-wellness that you guys have here on the second floor?
Yes. It's like, how can you do the work of, helping communities to better themselves if you yourself are just out of work, out of whack, are not in tune with yourself. I think, as a practice, both as an artist and as an executive, I know that I have to be and have some relationship with my own wellness. Doesn't mean like I'm always make the best decisions. It doesn't mean that, I'm in perfect health or anything like that, but I do have a very strong and healthy relationship with my own wellness. Like, I understand my limits and I know when I cross things. And I think that that's the most important part of the practice, is like, making sure that you're well enough to facilitate and direct the wellness of others. And, and our wellness center here is really kind of centered on that. It's centered on non-traditional healing practices. It's not like a traditional hotel spa, but the idea is actually working on, what's on the outside. Like here is very much focused on what's on the inside, like the infrared saunas that are very particular in their impact and like helping like what's happening on the inside with your internal organs, as opposed to, the other wet saunas, and then having crystal healing and mama therapy and sound baths. You can get a traditional massage in here too, but the idea is really working towards a more comprehensive and understanding of Eastern-based wellness practices. And the center is partnered with organizations that help to bring in communities that don't particularly have access to wellness. Because the wellness negotiation and that kind of like spa construct is not the most accessible one. Those things tend to be expensive, but we do have a lot of community-based and sliding scale-based programs as a way to really commit to allowing access to communities who just traditionally, a lot of these communities where these wellness practices actually stem from, no longer have access to it. So, to create a space up there, which number one is absolutely gorgeous, but then very much intentional about, like how do we create a wellness or collective wellness model, and quick example of that is, prior to COVID, in which I hope we'll be able to bring back soon, we had a free sound bath every day from 12 to 12:30. People could just come in, first come, first serve, have one of those vibrational experiences, and help them to really center their day. And like, we're still working towards, broadening that aspect. We partnered with the city and downtown, and we're doing like yoga classes in the park that were free and accessible. So there's there's some serious work there. I personally believe that we are still in a space of some deep and desperate need for collective healing coming out of a global pandemic and some of the other challenges that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years. And I hope that this is one of those places that can help facilitate that healing and bring us all to a better place.
The social and environmental impact.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier operating at a triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. Would you be able to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So every company has its own governance structure. Every company has, a particular way or behavior in which they make decisions and the way they act and interact with, consumers, and also the way that they interact with other resources that I mentioned earlier. And for us, it's not about the single bottom line. Every decision is not just driven about like how much profit we can make, at least in the short term. The idea is like we create a practice where we really consider what the impact this is going to have on the earth, what the impact it's going to have in creating a space where people who come into work and people who come to experience this as a customer feel like they can be their full and truest selves. Again, like these things sound like grand ideas, but at its core, it's critical. It's kind of the basic thing. It's like, if you want to create a space that's hospitable, then you have to be very intentional about what that hospitality looks like, and making sure that all people see themselves reflected in the space that they walk in. The way that we, engage our consumers when they decide to invest in us and invest in this ecosystem that's, pointed towards a better world for all people and all things. And the only way that you can really do that is making sure that the people that you work with and that work for you also have that same level of affirmation, and that they come to work and they're happy to be here and they feel like they're actually contributing to something that's just much larger than, a transaction. And and we have been developing policies and putting in new procedures in place that are really disruptive. Like, it really is, looking at the way things have been done before and the way that we're doing things now. It's a disruption there, and we all have to commit to that disruption for the better good. And I think that for the work that we've been doing over the last few years, like with one of our programs, which is called EDIT, which is Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Thriving. The big portion of that, the thriving part of it, is like, how do we create a thriving work environment for everyone who works within this ecosystem? And that's a challenge. It's not, we're not just focused on the C-suite or upper management. Our frontline workers go through the same training and education and empowerment and like sense of thriving that everyone else does in this company, and we all do it together. And that's just one of the ways that we really focus on our social metrics. For our environmental metrics, again, there's a lot of disruption, because we're coming into a space where it's like, disposability is an issue that we have to look at, and considering the fact that we're in these massive buildings, hotels take up a lot of space. It's generally a lot of property there. Like there's so many considerations for the environment that happen within that space, and your water use, your energy use, the waste that you create. All of those require a particular amount of nuance and attention in order for us to continue to move not only our business but like this entire industry towards a better place.
So just to go back to the people, planet, and profit. As someone in real estate, I've witnessed and I've seen, profit first, or it's all about the profit, it's all about the bottom line. I know that it's no easy task to mix passion, people, planet, all of those things together and still come out with a premium product that you guys have. How has that journey been, just to not make shortcuts, or still be able to deliver that and still stick to those goals that you guys initially had?
Yeah. I consider it a practice. Just like art is, because there's no one right way to get this, and I think when we took on this project, it was never thought of as prescriptive. We always knew that we were going to be met with challenges, and then we would meet those challenges and overcome them. But you're absolutely right. We live in a capitalist system, and in order for us to maintain and grow this project so we can extend our work, we have to make a profit. But the idea is we don't have to make a profit at expense of the people or the planet. There's plenty of room for profit, and audience with the planet, and audience with the people. And I think as you're tuning these things and as you're finding these things out, the one thing that you have to be is flexible and dynamic, and you got to be creative in coming up with your solutions. I think when we first announced this hotel was going to be opening, I think in maybe late 2017 or early 2018, there was a lot of discourse, about how you were going to do this work, and if your rooms are selling for $200-$300 a night, how's that in service of the community? And the idea is every institution that does good does not need to be a nonprofit. So, we need to break that narrative that, for-profit industries are just as responsible for creating a better world as nonprofits are. But I think the ideology there is these kinds of institutions must be extractive in order to be successful. That we come into a community and we just take, and we never give back. And then the idea of giving back and corporate social responsibility, it's sometimes couched in this philanthropic way where it's we're going to give you what we want you to have. And that's not necessarily in service and in conversation with the community. Community will always let you know what it needs from you. So kind of turning those things on its head and looking at ways that we can be in conversation with community in the work that we do. Yes, our rooms have a rate, and yes, the cocktails in here, they're not necessarily for everybody. It's not that we are against making profit. That would not be a sustainable model. We would have been closed and we would not be in service of anyone or anything. But it's what we do with those profits once they've been made. I think that's where the responsibility comes in, because there are lots of other institutions out there that work on the opposite side of the spectrum. They think about the world being in a way that it once was before. And no one challenges those organizations to cheapen their price. If you go to this place and, they're devoutly committed to whatever their ideology is, you don't go in there and say, well, we want a discount based on that. It's what they do with their money and how they invest in their communities, which I think is the important part. And I think that model is really what works for us. It's we take what we have and we invest it in the community in a way that's meaningful and impactful.
Love it, man. Love it. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to just bring up the sustainability aspect.
Okay.
So just circling back to Planet, can you elaborate on the sustainability? I know I read that the building is actually LEED Gold certified.
Yep. So the conversation around sustainability, it's what we've come to learn is it requires a tremendous amount of proactivity, because like sustainability in conversation with whatever you're building has to start way ahead of the design process, because you're thinking about your land use and the amount of waste that comes from construction, how you're using your water, the energy that it takes to actually construct something. So what we're learning is like figuring out where we can push sustainability the most, and a lot of that's in design, designing a space with an attention to materials, where you're invested in using renewable materials, which is not always the cheapest way to go about it. Plastics and other petroleum products are very cheap to use, but you have to make a commitment to sustainability in every single decision that you make. And then once you've built the building, like you think about how the building is going to be used, how it uses energy. Like we use 100% renewable energy here in this building, which is a hard conversation to have when you are in an urban space and you're on a grid. Because once the energy comes into the grid, there's no idea, like they have no idea where that energy actually goes. But our commitment to renewable energy source means that the infrastructure to build more renewable energy sources is what we're investing in. So it's not necessarily particularly what's going to be happening with our building, but if we are investing in renewable energy infrastructure, the entire city could soon be working towards a way where the majority of our energy is coming from renewable sources. So that's where the investment is. That's where the decisions have to be made, and the commitment has to be made. But we institute things that are on a much shorter feedback loop, like our rainwater cultivation program, where we have a 13,000 gallon tank in our garage here that collects rainwater and then treats it and uses it to flush all of our public toilets on the first and second floor. That's a decision that we can see an immediate short feedback loop on, but then some of the other decisions are really investment in a better, greener future. And you have to realize that coming into it, as we, try to find an industry that is inherently and overtly disposable by nature. Like how do you have a conversation around disposability? Well, instead of having like single-use plastic bottles that people shower with or wash their hands with, we have refillable glass bottles that we put in there. We're looking at seriously becoming plastic free, which is a very hard negotiation, because you got to think about what stuff is being made out there that can support the very demanding needs. Energy as it relates to laundry and cleaning. It's a big function of it. So, the idea here is like when you think about those things, sometimes they sound insurmountable, but the reality is like, if you devote enough time and energy to each one of those factors, then you could really start to have some serious impact. And the idea for us is like, who knows how many Eatons might be in the world, like, maybe 20, 50, 100. But the idea is not to create a standard that just works for us. What we're really interested in is also being a part of an industry shift, because if we have other companies, other hospitality brands doing the same thing that we're doing, things that we've tested and things that we've proven, then you're talking about a seismological shift, because now the entire industry is working towards that, as opposed to like, 100 hotels across the world or whatever it is we might be. And, and I think that's where we really think the most impactful direction around our sustainability work will come from.
Definitely. Now, this location is in DC, and the first location is in Hong Kong.
This is the first location.
This is the first location.
Yep. Okay. This is the first location, but Hong Kong came like 2 months after.
Yeah, that's so. And they both were opened in 2018, correct?
Both in August here and October there.
Okay. What stage did you enter? Where were you at?
I came in about a little over a year before we opened.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I came on in July of 2017, and we checked in our first guest on August 28th of 2018. And then we did a grand opening like a month or so later, but like, one of the things that we learned is like, and again, Kat had been looking for someone to fill the position that I was in at that time, which was the director of culture for this property. We certainly committed to finding that person as soon as we take on a new development, because I think it's important for our brand to build the community before we start building the building, because there's so many considerations that go into that process that are a part of like our governance structure, people, profit, planet, that has to be negotiated way before we open our doors to the public at first. And having someone in that position as soon as possible really helps to guide that kind of work.
Sure. So, was it a hard decision to join the company when Catherine approached you about it, or were you fully on board?
No, it was we had a 30-minute FaceTime, which was my first interview, okay. Which, I tell people is like, it just is a nod to the genius and intentionality that Kat brought to this project, because she knew that if I had spoken to like the traditional hospitality people, that it'd be very unlikely for me to be interested in taking on a project like this, considering my work as an artist, and I just wrapped up this project a year before that was very specifically talking about gentrification and displacement in the District of Columbia. But I knew that I was going to take the job, about 15 minutes into the conversation, because it really was, like she had the wherewithal, the knowledge and experience. And then she also had the power and ability to do what she said she was going to do as the president and founder of the company at that time. And I just, even though I wasn't looking for a job at the time, I had left, my previous job back in 2015, and, just really established my art career, and wasn't looking for a job. And then this opportunity came up, and then that conversation happened, and it was almost like I could not refuse to take on this position, because it really was an opportunity, I think, not in just service of me, but for me to be in service in my community in a way that I had not been before.
Definitely. Would you be able to name maybe like just like one aspect that just was like, boom, I'm in it, I'm all the way gonna jump into this project? Like, was it just one thing, or was it just the whole package? And because it's kind of like, for me, when I entered, it's kind of like more of like a oasis. It's like a utopia. It's like a world within a world. It's like a world for a person like who lives in a different country, a different state, who dreams about it. And when they come and enter it, it's like everything you thought you would want something to be, for a creative and for like a community enthusiast. So
it really is an aggregation of all the things. I mean, there are particular moments here where I just feel so proud to be a part of this project. There's several moments there that exist, but I just think the idea of like creating a space where people come in and immediately feel connected to something bigger than them, and something that's impactful, something that's positive, and something that's not necessarily exclusively for their own personal benefit, but for the benefit of the greater good. And I think that that's what really kind of like sealed it for me, because it's the opportunity to create conversation, the opportunity to create space, the opportunity to like allow the community to take ownership of this place in a meaningful way, and put it in a position to create the kind of impact that they need. And I think that all of those things really make for, a magical sixth sense that, sometimes people aren't able to articulate. They're just like, it's just something here, like be it in the wellness center, be it in the cinema, or here in the radio station, or in the library, or in the rooms where the vinyl is, and where the books are. I had one person come in, and I was out of town, and they went to the front desk and demanded that they talk to me, because it was like, what's going on with these books in the room? And when he got on the phone, he's like, my wife's book is in my room. What is going on? What are y'all doing? And I think that's just important, because, what that represented to me was like, that was just a reflection, and he, made the statement, is like, I've never seen myself so reflected in a space like this before, and how comfortable that made him feel. So it's moments like that, it's aggregation, it's like the idea of hospitality. It's the food and beverage, the drinks, the parties, the conversations, the art talks, the moments of organizing, the moments of impact, like all those things working around in this space just really creates this alchemy of, positive energy and influence just kind of bellowing out of this place.
No, definitely. And I'm just moving on to design. I just feel, since I walked in and entered my room, everything was just purposefully placed.
Yeah.
And it's a consistent flow, from like the lobby to the elevator to the hallway to the room. It's just, everything's like a steady flow. This was obviously purposely done. What was the idea behind that, or what did that come from?
Well, it's not on the intentionality. Like, I didn't work on the design process. That was pretty much way down the road before I came on.
Gotcha.
But, again, Kat just had the vision, the aesthetic. She knew what she wanted. I think, there's always a story and some intentionality around it. Obviously, when you come and you look into space, you see notions of mid-century modern, which is kind of a nod to Kat's, Kat and her family's like native city, Hong Kong, which is, definitely known for its mid-century modern aesthetic.
Tomelski, I'm the programming manager here at Eaton, DC.
Gotcha. How long have you been with the company?
I started beginning right before the new year, so late 2022.
Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, Pete, definitely appreciate you giving us a tour today. Whatever you can bless us with, definitely the ball's in your court.
All right. So as soon as you walk in, turn to your right, you'll see got Eaton Radio.
Yeah.
Art, culture, music are at the heart of Eaton as a brand, as a company. There's live radio shows, interviews, DJs come through at all times. We also have direct access to the radio station in Eaton, Hong Kong as well. People are able to listen to both.
Gotcha. And Sheldon mentioned it was online based, correct?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah, so there are DJs in here every day, usually in the afternoon. It's a web-based radio station, and right now we're focused a lot on music and DJs. But prior to COVID, we had a lot of podcasts and talk radio coming out of here as well too. And again, this is a kind of community benefit, for folks who want to amplify their voices. You can use this radio station as a as a soapbox of sorts to get in and share your thoughts and what your beliefs and practices are, like making the world a better place.
The main lobby.
Yep.
I'm good. How are you?
Another view of one of our works. Yes, through here you'll see one of the first art installations. Art, culture at the heart of everything in Eaton. When you come in, you check the board, see what's going on. There's always something, whether it's on the rooftop, whether it's in Eaton House.
Always an event, right?
What's that?
Always an event.
This is never empty. I've never seen just a single event. There is always something going on. And that's one of the things that separates Eaton from a lot of other institutions, is that people don't just come here to sleep. People don't just come here to rest. People come here for the events, the programming, sometimes before they come here as a hotel. And then they find out that they want to stay here. We get a lot of people that live in DC that come here to stay in the hotel because they have direct access to the events, to the programming, and as I heard somebody say, then they just have to take the elevator ride home at the end of the night.
I feel like it's a world within a world. So.
It is. Already you see one of our permanent installations, and then in here you'll see some of our changing installations. These are various different artists. We have local artists, national artists. This rooftop or this ceiling collage by J.D. Deerdorf, who's another DC-based artist. All of this is hyper-local. This is dedicated to the musical influence in DC. Always find something new. Beyond those doors, there's Allegory Speakeasy. This is what we call the library. This is where I take most of my meetings because it's one of the cooler vibes in the hotel.
Definitely.
We have a take a book honor system for the library books. People that are staying in the hotel, whether for programs, whether for staying in a room for the night, they're welcome to take some reading material and bring it back.
Okay, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So where are you from?
Originally from Philly.
Okay.
By way of lots of places.
Gotcha, man.
Another stop for the art tour. Fragmented Exodus. This is by Jesse Rain Littlebird, right there. This was actually created, painted, put together on site here. Jesse was in residence.
Oh, wow.
So up in Eaton House on the 4th floor, Jesse painted all of this, as well as the pieces down the hallway here. To be displayed here.
Wow. Do you have a favorite piece?
We're going to get over to the other. I'll show you my favorite. We're going to head there right now.
I got you.
It's a work that's up right now. Have you seen the cinema yet?
I have not.
Let me just check to make sure it's not occupied at the moment.
I got you.
Eaton Cinema, one of the hidden gems. I think it's the most beautiful room in the building.
Oh, wow.
So we do all sorts of things in here. We do regular screenings. People can rent it out. We'll do our own produced programming. Next month, we're going to do the first of 3 live film scores. So we have some silent films that we're going to be screening, but we're going to have live musicians doing the actual score for the film. This seats about 60 people, so it's always an intimate setting, but like I said, it's the most beautiful room in this building.
You can also rent the space as well, right?
You can rent the space. We always look for aligned partners. So now we certainly have folks come in that just want to use the space, but we'll do talks here as well. So last week we had a journalist in, they were screening their film, and then what you saw you see the director's chairs over there, they did a panel talk right afterward.
So what brings you all the way from Philly?
I went a couple different places. I'm a city boy by nature, and then I've been working in the arts all my life. And then I took a break from the arts for a year to build houses with Habitat for Humanity. And
really?
And so then I fell in love with the city. So this is Eaton House. One of the other things that separates Eaton out is that we have this side of the building called Eaton House, which is a member-oriented co-working space. Anyone that's staying in the hotel has access to this space as well. They're welcome to work here. It's a productive space for people 24/7. We also have our own programming in Eaton House, a whole season of programming. So if you come on in, that includes live events. We do So Far Sounds concerts here twice a month. We do live listening sessions. We do play readings, and we have visual artwork that's curated on a regular basis. I'll show you my favorite piece.
So, with your background being in arts and also having a background dealing with construction, I'm assuming.
Don't tell my managers that I know how to do anything construction. They don't know, and I don't tell them. I'll be on the engineering team. One of the things, especially post-pandemic, if the arts want to continue to grow, people want creative stuff. They don't necessarily always want to come into the same artistic venues or arts spaces. They might not feel welcome. They might not feel invited in there for whatever reason. Here, people get exposed to creativity in a broad spectrum of ways, right? Feel invited in, whether they know that it's a creative experience or not, and they want to be a part of it. That's how the arts are going to continue to grow. I mean, if you had asked me a year ago if I'd be working at a hotel, I'm not sure I would have said yes. But the number of folks we get in here that engage with creativity, engage with artists, individual artists, is unparalleled. So if you turn the corner here, you'll see a great example. This is Miko Relli's work, Bloom and Shine.
And is this a local DC?
DC-based artist,
okay.
Right behind you as well.
Oh, wow.
We've had this artwork up for a couple months now, and it's coming to the close. We're closing in on the end of this time with Mika's work. But one of the things I'm able to do here as the programming manager is, a couple months ago, we wanted to do an event based around this work, and Mika wanted to figure out what's the best way to do that. In addition to just talking about the work, a lot of her work is based or inspired by her own practice of reading tarot cards. She's got her own custom tarot cards that are her own artwork. So she came in and she offered, not only did she talk about the work, she offered tarot card readings for folks for free as they came in off the street. And was her way of opening up her own practice as an artist and talking about her creative experiences.
Yeah. So how hard is that, just being able to keep that communication between, Eaton and like the local artists, and keep everything, organic and growing? I guess it's all about relationships, right? Or just building those relationships with them?
It is a business of relationships,
Gotcha.
right? I mean, transparency is key. I'm always going to be an advocate for artists. And Eaton as a whole, as a brand, is always going to advocate for artists and for creatives and be a home that's at the root of what it wants to be, right? At the root of the hospitality industry is this creative and social gathering space. And it's about inviting artists into that, right? And saying, all right, well, here's a chance to break out of what you might have expected elsewhere.
Yeah.
Chance to say, all right, we're not just a gallery. We don't want to treat it like a gallery. So let's break out of that mold. And once you get into those conversations, artists want to be a part of it. Any artist or creative that I've talked to, whether they know what's capable for them as an artist in this space, they know about Eaton, and they're already intrigued by it. So it's a good place to start.
Definitely.
Keep going. You can see this is just what's coming up. Some of the highlighted events in September.
It's a perfect example of work-life balance around here, right?
Work-life balance around here, it's a little bit different for me because I'm in the arts and the programming world, right? So, this is my last day on site this week because I'll be out. I've got a couple days off, but I'll be back on Labor Day because we have an open mic that night with a group called Aya Art Collective. We'll be doing what they call the Aya Art Exchange open mic. That's great. I'll be there. I'm not necessarily expected to be in at 8 a.m. the next day because I'll be there until 10 or so, right? Which is important. That's healthy.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's something that everyone's always on, making sure that they have to hold tight to that work-life balance because it's a building that never closes, right? That's at the heart of what it is. And you have to be able to yourself close down for a little bit.
Definitely. And for you, how important was it just to be able to work with a company that has similar core values to you, or appreciation for the arts,
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't be here if they didn't. The artists and creatives, I believe, are at the root of culture, at the root of society. They are the roots of everything that we see on the visible end of things, right? The way the creatives force us to function as a society. And Eaton gets that, right? That's from what they make space for artists like this, but also, you look around the design of the building, right? These pillars over here, same design that we saw in the library, the same artist.
Oh, wow.
Right? J.D. Deardorff came in, they said, all right, let's find a way to extend that design, that artist, that art installation to other places, and weave it into the architecture. You don't see a lot of corporations that do that.
Definitely.
By their nature, yeah. Keep going. I'll give you a little glimpse upstairs in more of this co-working space as well.
Okay.
We also, as part of the programming in Eaton House here, we will invite small local businesses to come in on a weekly basis. So we've got some creative residents that we give space to and we program with them. We've got a resident cacao artisan that comes in and creates treats and samples for folks. And we also bring in a small business called Lou's Buns, and we say, all right, let's give you a platform so you can give out samples. People can take your card, take your information, and it's another way that Eaton is constantly trying to create new bridges, create new connections in the community. Right? That is more than just the high-level partnership, but also the grassroots.
Yeah.
But that's all handmade by one of our creative residents here, Christina Kim, who runs Secret Cacao Garden. So because she's been one of our residents and she's been here for years, and wellness is a part of her practice as well as these handmade chocolates, we brought her on as a vendor as well. So that's the next logical step, to say, all right, well, let's buy a certain number of these, we can give out to our residents, our members, people that are staying at the hotel, and we curate programs with her as well.
Tastes really good, tastes really fresh.
It is. I think she made it yesterday. So it better be.
So yeah, Eaton House, which is, also one of these kind of like non-traditional spaces within the Eaton kind of ecosystem, to have a space, a property that includes wellness, cinema, radio station, co-working space, there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think what the biggest passion and connection around what we do at Eaton House is an opportunity to kind of collide, folks who are coming into a space and folks who are from a space. The idea is like, the folks who are members at Eaton House are all working on their respective impact programs, be it environmental and social, and that shared collective physical space will allow for some synergy or colliding of sorts of energies and best practices around the many different ways that we can all contribute to making the world a better place. And I think that's, that practice or those possibilities are unique as every individual that's a part of that, and then as well as the organizations that are also there too. And the thing that we've been able to see is like how, organizations and individuals have been able to partner and enjoy, some collaboration, from just sharing physical space. Like we know there's a value in sharing physical space, and I think that COVID certainly helped to enunciate that. After we were deprived of that physical sharing of space, and now we're kind of back to that sharing of space, and and that sharing of space can't help but have a space for energy transfer, and again, like I said, sharing the best practices. So Eaton's House at its core is really that. It functions as a co-working and a social space, but it's also a space where folks can organize their meeting spaces, there are offices in there. So the idea again is to kind of take this ecosystem that's focused on folks who are working outside of these local communities or coming from these local communities and putting them adjacent to the hotel where people are coming in from wherever to do those similar works, and hopefully that they'll run into each other.
Gotcha. And you guys also have I believe, roughly 12,000 square feet of like event space that's able to be like rented.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you guys host weddings, different parties, things like that. Like, is it on certain floors? What's that?
Yep. So yeah, we have about 12,000 square feet of meeting space that, traditional like hotel, like convening space. These spaces are incredibly modular, so they could be a wedding, they could be a classroom, it could be, like we run a lot of our cultural programming out of that space as well too. So it's like people coming in, convening, and doing that kind of work. We have that kind of functioning space like other hotels do, where you can come in and you can do your conference here, and you can have up to 300 people in a room, all having a discussion or listening to a lecture experience about something.
Rooftop. Yeah, we had a DJ school. We had somebody coming in and doing a DJ workshop.
Oh, and they were teaching them how to do it.
Yeah, that was part of our programming for August in-house.
Oh, wow.
And then on Sunday, we had a listening session for a local DC singer-songwriter with a new album.
Y'all are really like embedded in like DC arts, like DC music, DC overall.
That's when I came in as a programmer. I always think of it in terms of cross-pollination, right? You say like, all right, well, there's the national, and then there's the local, and then when you can get it, you get the international. Mm-hmm. Everybody benefits. Mm. When you do the national here, the local benefits. When you do the local on a larger platform, the national benefits. Mm. Right? And DC is good for that too, because DC has this hyper-local, beautiful, deep, complex culture, but it also has this national platform because it's capital.
Yeah.
So in house, we have creative residents, right, where we've given them free working space for the year, and then we program with them in exchange. It's our agreement. Very Sad Lab is one of our stable residents. Very Sad Lab. You can bring your house plants. You can leave them for a certain amount of time, and they'll nurse them back to health.
Oh, wow.
These are plants people have left with them. If you're a hotel guest and obviously you're not traveling with your plant, you can come in for consultation. We do monthly sad plant open hours for them. So they're on the first floor of house where we just were, people will come in and ask for help. And so this whole installation, all these plants, it's all of them.
Cause I saw it on the first floor as well, right?
Same.
Yep.
That's all them.
And so whose idea was that to collaborate with them?
Well, I mean, it goes back to the idea of the residency as a whole, right? So we have about 30-some residents, right? Christina Kim, who makes the chocolate, she's also a resident.
Okay.
Right? And we've got residents that are social activists, we've got artists, we've got people, small business entrepreneurs, we've got collaborative organizations. And that when house was really being dreamt up, that was part of the original team's core movement here, was to say, yes, it's a productive space where people can rent offices and have conference rooms, but how do we make sure that it's a space for creativity growth? I'll show you up on the fourth floor. Show you a little bit more of the creative space there, but also we have what's called the creator room upstairs, which is for artists.
Okay.
So this is the creator room.
Oh, wow.
So this is all that paint on the walls there. That's from the Jesse Littleberg paintings downstairs that were painted up here. This is a chalkboard. This is a whiteboard. Whenever we need to make space for an activist group that's organizing. We want to have an artist in residence. The next artist I'm talking to hang artwork down in house has been working on a big, huge collage, about 5 foot by 5 foot piece that we're going to hang downstairs. She's been working on it since 2020, throughout the pandemic. But she's got a bunch of sculptural, 3-dimensional pieces she needs to add. So before we hang it, she's going to come up here and do all that work.
Wow.
Right? So we can provide that space and then say, all right, now we'll hang your work downstairs. And it adds to the storytelling, right?
Yeah,
To
no,
say,
definitely.
okay, this was created here,
Yeah.
right? On Wednesday nights, I've got a group called Float Dreamcast that comes in and they do jam sessions, right? And I was able to work with them and say, all right, let's do an off night. I'll give you the space. You'll come in. I've got the main contacts information. They come in from about 6 p.m. to midnight, and they have local musicians come in and they do jam sessions and just workshop sessions with local musicians.
Oh, wow.
Great, it's great use of the space.
No, definitely.
Right? Otherwise, this space would be sitting empty on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to do anything on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
Yeah.
But if they can do it, great. And that's that's their board in the back.
Wow. So if you had to choose, I already know the answer, I feel. If you had to choose between arts and construction, which one are you going with?
Arts and construction? Arts, man. Well, listen. When I started, this is not this interview or this piece you're doing, not about me, but I did construction for a year. It was great because I could, at the end of the day, I'd frame out a floor or all the walls that are going to go on one floor of a home. And you frame it out, and at the end of the day, you go, oh wow, I can touch these things that exist, which as an artist wasn't my life, right? I'm not a painter, I'm a producer and a director. So I could, at the end of the day, I could never touch the thing I made. It was a great feeling.
Yeah.
I loved making stuff. I loved building all of that. But the arts is in my blood. If I could, if I could do construction, I might do it. But I need, there's a reason I didn't stick with it. It's because I have to keep doing this.
No, definitely,
I like working with artists.
It seems like it's just like this big cohesive space where collaboration is over everything. Like collaboration, community, people coming together, and really like you said earlier, grassrooting, really,
Listen, what I like about, I've done my time in the nonprofit world, I've done my time in all over the place, right? Eaton has this model that says actually you can find success if you take your triple bottom line, right? Which is the people, planet, profit. You take care of the people, you take care of the planet, and profit does happen. Which I've found is true, just from what I've talked to, listen, I'm not on the sales team, but I've talked to the sales team, I know what they're going through, and they want, the people that they are talking to that want to come in and rent the space or get this big block of hotel rooms, they want a space that has a connection to community, that has these real fundamental values. Eaton has that, and it understands that it exists within this system. Those things can coexist. You can make money. Everybody can be successful here. As long as you hold true to what you're doing and you're transparent about it.
So, I'm not gonna take up too much of your time. I actually 2 questions.
Yep.
What would you tell someone entering the hotel before a stay?
Explore. I mean, you've been on, listen, we've spent the last 10, 15 minutes chatting, and you haven't seen probably a whole 50% of the building.
Yeah.
Which you'll see later in the week, right? So don't be in a rush to get, if you don't have to be in a rush to get where you're going, don't be. Explore, read about the artwork, ask about what's going on that night. Some of the best conversations I've had in this building are with people that say, oh, I'm here for so-and-so conference, but I stumbled upon this concert that's happening in this room. Or I stumbled upon this art installation that I didn't know was hanging. If you can take a chance to explore it.
Definitely. Last question. What would you tell them when they're leaving, like they're departing?
Yeah, when they're leaving?
Yep. Like if you had any suggestions, any takeaways for them, leaving this community oasis?
Stay curious, right? If there's an artist you learned about, go look at more of their stuff. If there's a band that you heard, download their album.
Yeah.
If there's a piece of artwork that interested you, find out why it interested you and follow it. See what's happening with that artwork, see what's happening with that artist, and keep an eye on the calendar, see what's going to go on, right? It's and because we are this home for creativity and for social movement and a dynamic space for these thoughts and ideas and gatherings, there's always something going on, whether you're staying here or not.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you guys win an Emmy?
Oh, so one of the films that we produced when we were doing Eaton Media, when we first opened, actually did win an Emmy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think we had produced, oh gosh, I think 10 to 15, maybe more than that.
Oh, wow.
Like little short films.
Yeah.
And that one, which I think the content was like based in Argentina. Sorry, it's like an Argentinian documentary that went on to win an Emmy. But yeah, we created some, really beautiful content.
Yeah.
There's we did a film festival, like a virtual film festival, AWIP. That was during COVID, and there's still a website out there, so go and check it out, and you'll see some of the content that we've created, and you can also see some of it on our website. But there was some beautiful storytelling that came out of the work. I think it was like Another World is Possible, which was kind of the ethos that we leaned into during the height of COVID, and took some of these stories and put them together on a website and created a film festival. Yeah, it's a lot of exciting things. Again, it's like some of those things, like, sometimes you just forget about like all the things that kind of came out of this space.
No, definitely. It's remarkable. Okay, so last two questions. Thank you for your time today. So, first one, what do you want to tell people to feel or expect when entering the building?
I don't know that I would tell them what to feel. I think I would ask folks to, when they come in to enter the space, is to relieve themselves of expectations and experiences prior. Don't bring your baggage and your expectations from other experiences into this space. Allow this space to be in conversation with you and its true and honest self. When you come in here, listen to what the building tells you, and listen to what that experience is, and just, understand that there's an intention there, and you just have to be open to the impact and however that resonates with you. I think that's probably the most enjoyable way to experience this building.
Gotcha. Now, what would you tell them when they're leaving?
Is hopefully if they've collected some goodwill, to carry that with them. Take that out and, share that with whatever communities that you engage or encounter as you leave here. And then take some of your expectations with you. And, as consumers, we really should start to demand that institutions like this do better and be better. I think that that's a fair thing to say. It's like, we should all come and expect, you can't expect everyone to do it as Eaton has done it or as well as Eaton has done it. But I think the idea is we really should be expecting businesses to behave better.
Definitely. Any last words or anything?
No, I think that's it.
Well, I definitely appreciate you, Sheldon. You guys are doing a great job. I just want to say thank you, and I'll add some details in the description of where they can find you guys. So.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.